Good day, fellow Jersey nerds, and welcome to episode 79 of the Jersey Nerds podcast, powered by HockeyJerseyConcepts.com. I'm your host, Ryan, and today on the Nerdcast, we're going to be looking back at the past logos of the Stanley Cup Final, and it's also a brief return of fake or authentic. And joining me for this journey into logos of past are Shawn and Steve. Shawn, I know you're under the weather. Are you going to be able to make it through this thing?
I 100% will be. Let me tell you, this is the tail end of it, and I may sound terrible, but I feel a lot better. I'm not bedridden anymore. We're going to tell you this right now. If you make your coworkers sick because you didn't stay home when you were sick, you're a bunch of jerks, and you're a Fairweather HJC podcast fan.
There you go, Shawn Don. Steve, what's going on?
Just the same old, dealing with the house, dealing with the dog. So yeah, how about you?
I'm gonna be dealing with my house soon. We're just getting ready to sell this summer, so I can't wait to dig into everything that comes with selling a home. It's gonna be 2 to 3 months of just agonizing repairs and spending money, and I'm not looking forward to it at all. But the end result will be good. So this past week, you guys get up to anything interesting? Shawn, you're out with a cold, but did you manage to squeeze in anything interesting?
Well, like most people who, when they're sick, I, of course, fell asleep with a bottle of NyQuil in hockey, as is, how you should do this. And in the process, I have managed to get tickets for the President's Cup Final between the Halifax Mooseheads and the Rio-Noranda Huskies tomorrow night.
What game is that?
This will be game 4. Now, I've never been to a playoff hockey game before because I was born in 1996. The Toronto Maple Leafs decided they were allergic to playoff hockey in 2004.
Well, that'll still be pretty exciting. Who's winning that series? Who's up?
Let me check right now because the series was tied at 1 going into the time at which this was recording.
Where is the Memorial Cup this year? I don't even know where it is.
Halifax.
It's in Halifax this year. So either way, both those teams are headed to the Memorial Cup.
Exactly.
I wonder.
It was not a good night. So Halifax lost 5-2.
That puts them down in the series 2-1 or 3-0?
Yeah, 2-1.
2-1. See, I wonder, when you're in that position, they're all athletes, right? They're competitive, so they probably want to win regardless. But logically, I wonder how much effort a regular person would put into that, knowing that both teams are going to the Memorial Cup anyway, and that's the ultimate goal at the end there. So that's.
I feel like if you're the team that doesn't host it, it's kind of a kick in the nads if you get in because you lost to the team that's hosting it.
Yeah, that's true. So the Huskies probably want to win a little bit more than the
Huskies lost something like 8 games all year.
Oh, so it's pretty much them in the 67s because Ottawa's had a pretty good year as well, from what I understand.
Yeah, and then they have, and then in the WHL, it's like Vancouver and Prince Albert. And they had 2 really decent years.
So it should be good. I do enjoy watching the Memorial Cup, where I get to pretend that I've been interested in junior hockey all year, even though I haven't watched a single second.
Oh, you don't like cheering for your Flint Firebirds?
Okay, interesting story. Well, they may be moving within the next couple seasons. Who knows? It's nothing official. But from what I heard, the guy who owns that team just owns the team, so his son could play on the team. But now that his son is becoming an overager and can't play in the OHL, he doesn't want to own the team anymore. So he might be looking to buy like an ECHL team or like an SPHL team and move them to Flint so his son could play on those. It's crazy. There's another story out there, but whatever. That's off topic. I'll tell you guys about that later. Steve, you get up to anything crazy this week?
Today was the first day that I started my new company.
Oh, nice. What are you doing now, if you want to say?
Well, to go through the story here. So back in March, my company that I worked for was bought. So not the company itself, but my division. So apparently, your division in a large corporation can be sold to another smaller company. And today was the first day that we officially became that new company. And of course, the old company said, yeah, everything's going to work fine. And then we got over there, and for some reason, things just didn't go as smoothly.
So were you in the same building, or was it a complete move? Or
We are in a new building, but I'm actually near PNC Park. So,
is that going to work out for baseball games?
I get out when the baseball games start. So, I mean, it's not really a bad thing, but other than that, I mean, if I ever want to catch a baseball game, I can just literally walk 3 minutes to the stadium. So,
Well,
but I mean, yeah, it's not. It's a good company. You know, I like my job and everything. It was just, it's the growing pains. But note to self, kids, make sure that your company's not going to be sold and wondering what just happened.
Yeah, tough transition. That's a tough transition. But you never can be sure. You never know, right? But
Right.
it could always turn around. This past weekend for me, I had a hockey tournament in Niagara Falls. Actually, it started with taking the kids to Great Wolf Lodge in Niagara Falls for a week. So that was family fun.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, family fun and entertainment. And then the kids and the wife left to go back home, and I stayed in Niagara Falls for the men's the men's beer league tournament, and that was just a gong show. Evening one, not even day one. Evening one started with 11 tall boys, and just a big old piece of weed gummy. Hadn't had a weed gummy before, so we all go out for a lovely steak dinner. And I got to tell you, I don't remember it at all. I remember getting the prime rib that I ordered, and then I remember leaving for the casino. I don't remember how delicious the prime rib was. I don't remember any bites of the prime rib, and I don't remember what we talked about at dinner. So that was a good start. Then trying to walk home at 3 a.m. from the casino, I couldn't walk straight, so I stumbled off the sidewalk. Good thing I had my buddy with me, and went ass over tea kettle and stumbled down and fell right over onto the sidewalk. So that was a good start. Then the next...
Here's a question.
Yeah.
Which casino in Niagara Falls was it? Was it the one by Clifton Hill?
It was the newer one, Fallsview. Fallsview Casino.
Was that closer towards the island?
I suppose so. It's on closer to the Horseshoe Falls rather than Clifton Hill. It's still fairly close, but yeah, it's the newer one. Yeah, so that was that was an interesting walk. And then so we had to play hockey. It's a tournament. You're playing 3 games, and the first 2 we lost, including one where we the other team was getting a penalty, and so our goalie came to the bench, and one of our players decided to pass it back, and it went straight into our own net on a delayed penalty call. So overall, the tournament went really well. I brought 24 tall boys with me and did not bring any back home. And just overall, a good boys weekend, as it should be. So we left Niagara Falls a complete mess. But for the first time in my life also, I went to Hooters restaurant. And what a depressing place that is, especially with a bunch of drunken hockey players and just the waitresses who just could not. They're just happy to take your money. They really could not be bothered to be there. It was just
the wings.
They were just fine. They were whatever, like any other wings you'd get in any other restaurant. They were not exceptional. They weren't bad, but
that's such a shame.
And then we ordered the hot wings, and it just tasted like wings with Frank's Red Hot sauce on them.
Yeah, that sounds
So,
about right, but that's pretty shameful, being that you're near Buffalo.
That's
Actually,
true.
this is
no, your story reminds me of when I played Frisbee in college. And we went up to Niagara Falls. We played at Fort Niagara, which is on the border. And we went to like this hibachi restaurant, and we had to do a sake race.
Yes.
So if you know what a sake race is, it's a sake bomb that you're basically pounding on the countertop for the shot glass to fall into your drink. And then the last person to drink it lost. It was my roommate who did it. So we're thinking, okay, what is he going to have to do? They ended up having to where they like brought this drum over, and they brought a clean spatula, and they're just like bend over. And like this bachelorette party came over and started spanking him with it. It was the wildest thing, but
That's what these weekends are for. That's what they're for.
exactly.
All right, now
I'm
that
gonna let you
go ahead, John.
let you little HJC listeners in a little secret. If you're ever in Niagara Falls, don't go to the chain restaurants. They're all rigged up there because they know the Americans are there, right?
Well,
What they do is they take the Canadian prices, they flip the dollar, and then flip it back.
They also charge
So all of
a
a sudden-
tourism tax.
You know, your $18, steak at Smitty's is now 18 US, and then all of a sudden it costs like 30 Canadian. And you could drive up the road to St. Catharines, get a visit with Mr. Stabby, and get your meal at a regular gouging.
Well, as an American who has visited there, I can confirm they do charge out the butt for everything.
Oh yeah, that's the name of the game in Niagara Falls. But
That and Niagara on the Lake.
oh yeah, it's all tourism. But that you'll get that anywhere touristy. Now that we got the fun and debauchery out of the way, let's get started with the Stanley Cup Final logo look back. Okay, so we're going to be doing a complete look back at Stanley Cup Final logos. This isn't Stanley Cup playoff logos. We're going to be specifically looking at final logos. I've grouped them together. Now, there may be some slight changes within these groupings, but overall, I've put groups together that look the same. So we'll go by years, and the first group we're looking at is 89 to 94. Group number 2 is 95 to 99. The next one is 2000 to 2004, a little brief stint, 06 and 07, an even briefer stint in 2008, and then I've grouped 2009 to present as its own group. So we'll review each grouping, and then we'll go through specifically what our favorite and least favorite is. So starting with the first ever Stanley Cup patch, 1989 to 1994, the only slight variation here was 1993 when they celebrated 100 years of the Stanley Cup. And if you want to look through any of these logos with us, there is a link to sportslogos.net in the description of this episode. So we're looking currently at 1989 to 1994. This is the Stanley Cup Final logo that I grew up with as a kid. So obviously it's just going to have a nostalgic kind of love for it from my end. But I'd love to hear what you guys think. Shawn, we'll start off with your thoughts on this one.
So this is the logo I grew up with being sold to me on CCM vintage jerseys. Sorry, Ryan. But they're really solid. I think that everybody's seen this patch at some point, given the teams that won. You've seen this on a jersey at some point, or some guy at a hockey game you've been to has worn this. It's quintessential. It's classic. It's bright. I'm a big fan of the orange banner, and I'm a big fan of the light blue. I think this is the classic Stanley Cup Finals logo.
Steve, would you agree with that, or do you have differing thoughts?
I have to agree. This is also the logo basically that I was raised on. Of course, we all know why. But really, it is effective because the shape of it is simple. It focuses your eye on the cup first, but then your eye moves around on the logo, and you see all the nice little details of the striping within the roundel. It's just the plain Wales and Campbell Conference writing there, and then the Stanley Cup Championship right at the base of the cup. It's a beautiful and well thought out logo overall with the colors as well.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. The colors are what I really remember. Like, just a really great use of orange, and then there's the blue there to complement it. As you guys mentioned, Stanley Cup right out front. You get to see it. And I just specifically remember watching Hockey Night in Canada as a kid, and this being a very animated logo. Pieces would come in piece by piece onto your screen. You get the circle, then the lines, the cup, the banner, and it would weave its way through the circle, and just all that very memorable stuff. And back in the 90s, they used to put this logo on the ice during the playoffs, which was always pretty cool before the sponsorship space was at a premium. This logo would go on the ice for the playoffs, which just, it's part of the nostalgic feel of it, and begins my love affair with this logo. Let's move on to the next modified version, which started in the 94-95 lockout shortened season when the New Jersey Devils swept the Detroit Red Wings in the final, and it was pretty much kept until the 1999 Stanley Cup Final with the famous Brett Hull toe in the crease goal in double overtime. So just, Shawn, your thoughts on this updated logo?
Despite the fact that all these cup finals were memorable in one way or another, if not for the play, then just the teams that played that year, I found these to be very underwhelming. I've never really had a desire to throw one on a jersey, with the exception of maybe Colorado in '96. That's about it. It's a fine logo, but it lacks that certain, I guess you could say quality or prestige that the previous logo had. There's no border to it. I think that's the biggest thing, is that it's a black circle, and that kind of takes away from it.
I would definitely agree. Steve, your thoughts on the second version of the Stanley Cup Final logo?
I just want to add on to what Jets was saying, because I completely agree with him. I mean, it's not a bad logo. I just feel like it's kind of a downgrade from what they had previously, because if you look now, the cup is just a silver cup. They didn't stitch it to where it actually looks like there's a reflection on the cup before. They put the NHL logo front and center on the cup, and they put the banner even higher up on the cup to show Stanley Cup Championship. And I mean, this still works. I just don't really think it was a good update to the previous logo. I think the logo after that, if they were to cut this logo out and go right into the other logo, that would have been the upgrade.
And I would have to agree again. This logo is kind of like it just happened to have a black background. I think there was maybe a couple years where they used a white background. I don't remember specifically, but this almost is like black for black's sake. Along those lines, right? It was a change in the 90s, because it got to a point in the 90s where people just wanted to change things for the sake of changing them. And so this was a change that wasn't necessarily needed, and it's very 90s. There's nothing special about it. But having said that, it's not a terrible logo. It's assembled well, good. I would say good balance to it. Explains exactly what it's for. Go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, what I think it is? I think it's the black just mutes the colors itself. I think that's why. And not only that, but just like toning down the detail overall. I think that's just what degrades is that the colors were toned down so they're not bright and vibrant, and just the level of detail that's on it it's not as craftsmanship looking as the original, and it doesn't feel as worthy.
Yeah, there's not a lot of life to it. It's lacking some life. So, teams that won the cup wearing this logo on their jersey, New Jersey, as I mentioned, in the lockout shortened season. Then we had Colorado sweeping Florida, Detroit sweeping Philadelphia, Detroit sweeping Washington, and Brett Hall, as I mentioned, taking Dallas over Buffalo in this logo. Moving on to the next iteration, we had it's again a modification of this logo, and this next one lasted from the year 2000 until 2004. We have some more color added here, most of the black removed. Shawn, your thoughts on this one? Because this one was used during maybe your formative years. Go ahead. What do you think?
These are the first logos I remember, especially 03 and 04. So yeah, I really like these. I think that they're almost like HD, not HD versions of the originals. I really like what they did with that kind of sun in the background, but I can't put my finger on it, but it reminds me of something, and nostalgic and all that. And yeah, other than that, I didn't realize that the font was really that outdated at the time. Like that is quintessential early 2000s if I ever saw it. But other than that, really this logo could have lasted a lot longer if not for the lockout. But at the same time, I think it lasted just about enough time.
Yeah, this was kind of the update that I would have enjoyed for the 94-95. So I think it could have been used for those 5 years where in place of the logo we were just talking about. Steve, this version of the Stanley Cup Final logo, what do you think about it?
This is possibly my favorite one because this is one of those things where they take everything great about the original and then they just add on to it. And if you look at the two side by side, they're different enough to where they can hold each own. But at the same time, it keeps in, and it's kind of like how we talked about how they do the draft logos, how they're each different, but yet they each have an identifier that keeps it together and keeps it known as, oh, that's the Stanley Cup logo, or oh, that's the draft logo. So I think this does an excellent job of keeping that tradition with the Roundel logo, with the Stanley Cup in it, but it really does hold its own. And I really think that white with the orange sunburst just works excellent behind the Stanley Cup, and just the blue is the accents for the Roundel logo and banner. It just, overall, it's a great logo. Also, it's the only logo that was ever worn on a Anaheim Mighty Duck jersey.
Excellent point there. As you mentioned, Steve, the colors here look fantastic. They really worked so well together, just like they did on the original Stanley Cup Final logo. And as we mentioned, this is a really nice update. The only thing that drives me that I don't like is that on the first 4 years of this logo, the Stanley Cup is actually a light blue rather than being silver. It looks like that was modified for 2004, but that might be the only detractor. But I do remember that it didn't matter which jersey this logo was on. It looked appropriate. It looked good on the jersey. It didn't look like a modification or an outlier. It looked like it should have been there. Teams that won the Stanley Cup wearing this logo include New Jersey over... New Jersey over Dallas. Whoa, I almost blanked on that one. Colorado over New Jersey, Detroit over Carolina, New Jersey over Anaheim, and Tampa Bay over Calgary. For the 04-05 season, we had the famous full season loss due to a lockout, unfortunately, so we didn't have a Stanley Cup Final. And the NHL came back with a brand new logo for the league, so we needed a brand new logo for everything else. And we got a brand new logo for the Stanley Cup Final, unfortunately. And this one is interesting. This one might be my least favorite, but let's see what you guys think. Shawn, the 06 and 07 versions of the Stanley Cup Final logo.
So despite the fact that the 07 Cup Final was probably my least favorite and the one that I watched the least, I love these logos immensely, purely for nostalgia. Like, I remember both these finals. I remember it being one of the first Cup Finals that was they ever had in HD. Would have been like Game 7 between Edmonton and Carolina. And overall, I really liked the East versus West faction here because it was the first time I can remember. So prior to this, the NHL was using those puck logos, for the Eastern and Western Conference, and I'd grown up on those until that time. And then these nice, shiny Shield logos come out, and I thought they were the coolest thing in the world. And then it's like, oh, we're going to put them into the Cup Final logo? Awesome. Great. Fantastic. So on a nostalgic level, I remember loving these a lot. Now I really get why people don't like them. And really, I'd only ever put this on a Carolina Hurricanes jersey.
Steve, your thoughts on these two logos?
Well, first off, Shawn, I'm glad you finally came around to the fact that the mid-90s Eastern and Western Conference logos are the superior logos here, so thank you for that. But
no, the early 2000s are with the puck. No, they're maroon and navy, not teal and purple.
No, the teal and purple. No, just no, Shawn. You had to be there to witness greatness of 90s All-Stars, but that's an argument for another day. Getting back to this, at the time, you can definitely tell this was a time period logo. It really has started to age itself. I mean, I do like that they have the shield on there, that they changed it to a shield. I think that just really works well overall as a logo on here. What I don't like is how 05, 06, I think that's the better one out of the two, just because they really thickened out the outline of the Stanley Cup on the 2006-2007, and it mutes the cup itself in color. And I mean, overall, they're not bad logos. They're not terrible. It's just it's kind of like they were close. They were close to getting a nice modern update, but they just didn't push themselves far enough.
I always found these two logos to be way too basic. I assumed when we saw this logo in 2006, I thought, oh, the lockout, prevented them from coming up with a decent logo, and then they come back with it in 2007, albeit slightly modified. As you mentioned, Steve, the cup kind of disappears here in the 2007 version, but I just found it to be way too basic. I mean, we got the red side and the blue side, and they're representing the two different conferences. And then we have to have the two banners for the two conferences, which is just, they're way too big, and they're not subtle enough for me. So, and I really think that Stanley Cup font it's not important enough. It's a little goofy. And so that's why these ones are going to end up being my least favorite Stanley Cup Final logos. But we'll get to that. Now we have the rare instance of one logo being used for 1 year. The 2008 logo just had one run. It was for the Detroit-Pittsburgh Stanley Cup Final, and then it disappeared. So, Shawn, we'll get your thoughts on this one.
It's interesting because I didn't realize how different it actually was. It's fine, don't get me wrong, but the changes that they made to it were so much better. Because the year after, those are, well, we'll talk about what I think of those. Again, this one's fine, but it's aged to a point where you can really tell this is from 2008. But the update, between the two, it's unbelievable how much better they got between 07 and 08.
Yeah, this was a good update based on my dislike of the 06-07 logos. So this was a good update. It was cool to see the blue used well. The Stanley Cup was featured again. So that was nice, but it was just average. So, Steve, what did you think of this one? Because your Penguins were in it, so that sometimes that helps, boost how you feel about a logo because your team actually took part in this final.
Yeah, but you got to remember that was the one we lost in. And that was and then Marian Hostess says, oh, I'm going to go over to Detroit because I want to win another cup.
That worked out for him well, hey?
Oh, believe me, the endless shame on that. But really, I don't have a problem with this. a sophomore in high school, and I had just gotten into designing, and I had finally learned Photoshop. So I used this logo on like a little collage that I made. But I do like how it's two-toned. I'm kind of a fan of like two-tone logos, kind of like the Memphis Grizzlies bear logo. How the face has some color on one side, but it's just like muted on the other. So I think that works nice on this shield. But it's like Shawn said, that you can tell when this was made, and it is a significant update from it, but it just still has some of that design elements that hold it back to be dated. Like one opinion of mine would be just the Stanley Cup font just being white with a blue and black outline. That it doesn't feel important enough to say Stanley Cup there. It kind of feels like that they just threw it in front of the cup itself, which they spent all that time designing because they needed it written somewhere on there, and it was kind of an afterthought. But I mean, overall, it's not that bad of a logo, but I just don't think it was, like I said, it was like they kept progressing and progressing, but they just weren't pushing it far enough.
Yeah, I would agree. This one, that Stanley Cup font. I like the way you put it there, Steve. It just didn't make it feel important enough. Let's move on to 2009 to present. There was a slight change in about 2013, roughly, to the Stanley Cup in this logo, but I'm grouping them all the same. So this is the longest running Stanley Cup Final logo. We got 2009 till present. Shawn, what do you think of this logo that they currently use?
You know, it's funny because I'm not a big fan of the playoffs logo, but I love these finals logos. They're simple. Yes, they're templated. Yes, they've been around for a while, but it works. There's nothing in it that I would really consider changing. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's consistent. You know, it doesn't feel like in the way that the Super Bowl logos feel like corporate and bland. There's none of that, because you can always look forward to seeing your team's logo on the left or right if they make it that far, or a different team every year there. There's a certain level of organicness to it that I really like about it. And, you know, eventually they will come up with something new. But as of right now, I'm very happy with these.
Yeah, I would agree. These have been working great, and it's going to be the 11th season for this logo this year. So that's pretty exceptional. Steve, your thoughts on the current logo?
So I will have to say I love the finals logo just because of how simple but effective it is. So I think that they've done a great job, and really all they ever did was just change around the cup. Instead of the cup looking like you're looking up at it, you're now looking directly towards it. So, but just the fact that they have that little banner under the Stanley Cup Final that looks chrome, and it remains consistent. It's great. Now, speaking about the playoffs logo, when they had the blue in there, it was nice to see some color, but when they put it to black, it just kind of, I don't want to say muddied, but I want to say kind of just like everything got lost in there. Like the NHL logo gets lost in being in front of the Stanley Cup, and just the Stanley Cup itself. You can't really see the outlines when it's black there. So, but I think overall this is like the final logo itself is it's a perfect example of keep it simple, stupid, and really, I don't know what else more to say about it. It's a great logo. Yeah, the final logo is simple. I mean, it gets to the point. Stanley Cup Final. It's written right there. It looks cool. It's got like using the black and silver and white scheme for the final logo makes it look important, and it feels important. Like what Shawn said, I do prefer the Stanley Cup Finals or Stanley Cup Playoffs logo when it used the blue shield versus the black shield, which changed in 2013. I prefer it when it was blue. But so when it switched from blue and then you get to the final and now everything's black and silver, it made it feel that much more important. And I also really like the current logo
because it fits on any team's jersey. It's not going to clash. It's not going to look weird or different. It feels like a badge that they earned, that they can now put on their jersey because they earned it and they got to the Stanley Cup Final. So an excellent logo and really, really works. And I could do with it being around for a few more years. I don't really hope for them to change it. So we'll see. We'll see how long that lasts, because people do love change, and the logo has been around now for 11 years. Just before we go and choose our favorite and our least favorite, I'll do a quick rundown of each team that won wearing these logos. So the original logo, 89-94, Calgary beat Montreal, Edmonton beat Boston, Pittsburgh beat the North Stars, Pittsburgh beat the Blackhawks, Montreal beat the Kings, and the Rangers beat the Canucks. The next version, 95-99, New Jersey beat Detroit, Colorado beat Florida, Detroit beat Philly, Detroit beat Washington, Dallas beat Buffalo. Then we have the 2004 logo, and we have New Jersey beating Dallas, Colorado beating New Jersey, Detroit beating Carolina, New Jersey beating Anaheim, Tampa beating Calgary. Coming out of the lockout, we had the 2-year version of the logo, and we had Carolina defeating Edmonton, Anaheim defeating Ottawa. I agree with Shawn on that one. That may be the most boring Stanley Cup Final and the one that I watched the least. Then we have the really interesting one-off logo for 2008, where we had Detroit defeating Pittsburgh in that Stanley Cup Final. And then we get into the current logo, where we had Pittsburgh coming back and defeating Detroit, Chicago defeating Philadelphia, Boston defeating Vancouver, LA defeating New Jersey, Chicago defeating Boston, LA defeating the Rangers, Chicago defeating Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh taking out San Jose, Pittsburgh taking out Nashville, and Washington taking out Vegas. So those are your Stanley Cup champions, while a Stanley Cup Final patch has been around. Let's get into our least favorite logos. I started us off. I said the 2006 and 2007 logos coming out of the lockout were my least favorite. I find them boring and a little too simple. Shawn, where do you stand with your least favorite logo?
I'm going to say 97, 98, because it is disgustingly hard to find one of those at times.
And Shawn,
the rarity.
Sorry, go ahead, Shawn.
The rarity of 97, 98 of trying to get one for a Washington jersey. It's disgustingly rare to find one of those.
Steve, your least favorite Stanley Cup Final logo?
I'd actually have to agree with Shawn on this. The black just, I don't want to say ruins it, but it just tones it down to where it's boring. And I just think that if we could get rid of those years and then just replace the one that they started in 2000 with all of those, then we'd be all hunky-dory, and I'd be right on board with you saying the 2005 to 2007 is just terrible.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. I would have loved to have seen the 2000 update happen in 1995. But let's look at our favorite logos. This could be very interesting. Shawn, where do you stand? What's your favorite?
If I had to pick a favorite, I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to say it's 2004. Just because that's the first one I remember, and I played a lot, and I do mean a lot, of Dynasty Mode in NHL 2004. And the thing is that they just kept that logo going throughout. So it'd be like 2024, and they'd still be using that logo.
Yeah.
So it's kind of drilled in my head.
Steve, your favorite Stanley Cup Final logo?
I think my favorite's going to have to be 1992. So it doesn't have to do with the Penguins or anything. I think it just has to do with the level of detail that they had back in the day for patchwork to do this patch. And just, it feels so classic, but classy at the same time, very regal. It really has that like, how do I put it? It puts the Stanley Cup up where it belongs on that high pedestal of, this is a really sacred event. You're lucky just to be here. You better be darn well happy that you're wearing that patch. and that logo just says it right about the cup, is that, this is not the type of championship that you can win in any other sport. So,
well, I was going to say that that era of logo is my favorite. I would give it to 1990 because I think Edmonton-Boston's probably my favorite looking Stanley Cup final of all time. But I can't help but ignore the current version, and especially the modified version that came about in 2013. Steve, you mentioned it when we went from the perspective of looking up at the cup, and it changed to being face-to-face with the cup. So I'm going to say the current version, and more specifically the mod made in 2013, is my favorite. But I'm having a hard time tearing myself away from that original version, and that's just because that's what I grew up with. But my official favorite is the current one. So that's pretty cool. We were kind of all over the board there with our favorites, but pretty concentrated on the same ones for our least favorite. Coming back now for a special appearance is Fake or Authentic. Fake or Authentic. Fake or Authentic. This is the game where I come up with some statements, but it's up to the co-host to determine whether or not they are fake or authentic, just like the jerseys you see around NHL rinks. So I have 3 statements this week, and here we go with statement number 1. As we record, we know that Carolina and Boston will play in the Eastern Conference Final in the 2019 Stanley Cup playoffs. Series has yet to begin, but this question is, the Carolina Hurricanes will make it to this 2019 Stanley Cup Final. Shawn, fake or authentic?
God, I hope it's authentic.
I'll
be honest with you, I don't know, because whatever I say will probably not come true, especially if I put money on it.
Just to see the Bruins lose.
Just to see the Bruins get this far and just fall flat on their face would be hilarious. On the other hand, it has almost been like, how long has it been since they won a cup?
2011?
It's been a while, so if they do win, it's not the worst thing in the world.
The Bruins were 2000. Yeah, the Bruins were 2011. The Canes were 06. So.
Yeah, so it really, I do just want to see like Joe Thornton or Alex Steen or some old guy like that raise the cup this year. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of pulling for San Jose. So, which side do you want to land on officially here? Fake or authentic that the Canes will make the final?
I'm going to say fake just so they'll do it.
Steve, Carolina in the final this year, fake or authentic?
To be honest, I really want to say authentic just because, and the fact that they just went in and they handled business with the Islanders there, I think that was good. I think they're going to have a tougher time with Boston, particularly with goaltending and Zdeno Chara. But I don't know. The Carolina Hurricanes just have like that energy, like they're riding a high, and it's like one of those things where it's like, you ever play a sport and like you're just having one of those games where nothing can go wrong for you? It kind of feels like that for Carolina, but at the same time, I know Boston is a good team. This is, to be honest, this is just one of those rounds where it could go either way. But I think as long as Carolina can limit them like they limited the Islanders, or just keep them to about 1 goal to 2 goals a game while still generating offense and keeping it in Boston zone, then I think they'll definitely make it.
Yeah, I'm going to my head says this is fake. The Bruins should beat the Hurricanes, but that's what magical runs do, A team just somehow finds a way to win. So just because for whatever reason this year I have this hatred for Boston and I want them to lose, just because they beat the Leafs. That's the only reason, and it's stupid, but hopefully this is authentic and Carolina can take out the Bruins and make it to the Stanley Cup Final. Fake or authentic number 2, blue is the superior flavor of Gatorade? Shawn, fake or authentic?
Are we just talking like of the originals?
Any Gatorade. Blue, original
All right,
blue.
fake.
Which
Fake.
one?
It goes to Green Apple.
Does Gatorade make a green apple? I thought Powerade just
That
made it.
they
They do,
do.
but you can only get it at like gas stations and convenience stores. Like you can't get it at the grocery store.
Oh, it's an exclusive.
You guys can't get it at
Yeah.
Walmart?
You can't even get it at Walmart. Well, Canadian Walmart sucks by comparison to your guys' Walmart because it's just like a bigger store where everything's a little dirtier.
He's not wrong
Okay,
on
so
many
maybe they're
counts.
the same thing.
So green apple for you, huh? Okay.
Green Apple. Stop it at like a Petro-Canada or an Esso. For those of you in the States, Esso is mobile.
Or Exxon. Used to be Exxon.
Ex-
Still might. Anyways, Steve, blue is the superior flavor of Gatorade.
I'm going to have to go fake on this one. I really like the mango kind that they have. That's my go-to for it. And I can get it for like 99 cents for one of the decent sized bottles at Walmart, or you could get like two of them for $1 at a gas station. They're just cheap as hell down here.
Oh, damn,
But,
I'm jealous.
No, but I mean, if we were going like original between Cool Blue, Fruit Punch, and Orange and Lime, I'd definitely go Cool Blue all the way.
You guys ever buy the powder Gatorade?
It is don't.
Yeah, it's not worth it. I mean, you just plow
Be better
through
off.
it.
Do you remember when was it Gatorade that made iced tea in the 90s?
Oh no, I don't remember that. Did they do that? That's not right.
I vaguely remember it was either Gatorade, it was some energy drink company made powdered iced tea.
Well,
And-
if anyone
Yes,
finds
they
that on
did.
Twitter, send that to us.
Found it. Gatorade iced tea cooler.
What? So I was right. Oh my god. I remember my cousin having that. Like my aunt had it in her pantry. And it was just
Gatorade
like
came in a glass bottle.
it was not iced tea. It was not refreshing iced tea. It was that time where like McDonald's was selling hot dogs and pizzas, and Gatorade was trying to get to the old Southern guys with iced tea.
Okay, what
And,
year that was?
what?
At 1993.
Jesus, I'm dating myself.
That's when that was first introduced.
The only reason I'll ever know Gatorade was in glass bottles is from the movie Clerks. And all the
Seriously?
guys come to play hockey, and they took Gatorade from the fridge, and it was in glass bottles. But I don't remember specifically being a fan of Gatorade when it was in glass bottles. I'm sure my mom would have been like, "No, you're not having Gatorade." Now I'm an adult. I drink Gatorade whenever I want. Thank you.
Does it make
Sorry,
you
Powerade
feel like
better.
a sieve?
Makes me feel like a man. Actually, nothing beats getting a 6-pack of Gatorade when you're sick and you just don't feel like putting anything in your body except for Gatorade. Gatorade's the only thing that your body will accept. There's something a little bit satisfying about that. But at the same time, you're sick. Let's go to
Powerade.
or Powerade. That's fine. Fake or authentic, number 3. Teams should not be allowed to wear more than 2 sets of jerseys during the playoffs. So I'm talking home set is one, road set is the other. So teams should not be allowed to wear more than 2 sets of jerseys during the playoffs. Shawn, fake or authentic?
You know what? I'm going to say authentic, and I'm going to take it a step further. Carolina, your run's been ruined because you're wearing those black jerseys. You guys are a bunch of jerks, because now if you do make the Cup Finals, guess what? If you win that at home and people start buying your Cup Finals jerseys, guess what they have to get to be authentic? You bunch of jerks.
Steve, fake.
Okay, Don.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Grapes. Grapes 96. Steve, fake or authentic, teams should not be allowed to wear more than 2 sets of jerseys during the playoffs.
You know what? Just out of spite for Jets, I'm going to go fake on this. Or wait, am I correct on that? They shouldn't be allowed?
If you want to see some alternates, you'd be fake.
Okay, so yes, I say why not? What if an alternate complements better with the other team's like white jersey? Or what if they want to do a color on color, but the teams both have black jerseys? So, or what if, say, like San Jose wants to pull out their sweet black alternate jerseys for a series instead because, you know, their teal jerseys wouldn't look good against a team's white jersey. So I understand why they do it. It's because that they want to be specific. They want to do it for authentication purposes and for memorabilia purposes. But I just don't. It's kind of like the one helmet rule in the NFL. It makes no sense to me.
I prefer just keeping it simple with 2 sets, and that's just because I prefer rules and order. I look at like the NBA playoffs or
well here let me come up with a rebuttal question. Would you be open to them being allowed to switch out a jersey in the next round? So, for instance, say that Carolina, for example, this round, instead of wearing the black jersey, they would wear the red jersey.
I want to say yes, but that's just letting a team off the hook for making a bad decision. So, again, I'm going to go back to my desire for rules and order and say, no, you gotta make the right decision from the get-go here. And you got to stick with it. That would be my preference. But I mean, again, like I was saying, you see the NBA playoffs and baseball playoffs, and it's easier to transport, you know, those uniforms when you go on the road. So obviously that's fine. But I just think it gets it's not, it doesn't get sloppy, but it's just easier to. We're not stupid, but it's easier to follow along when you can see a game and you know Carolina, black jersey home, Carolina, white jersey road, and you're not kind of guessing, you know, oh, they're wearing their alternates tonight. I wonder what game number it was or where the game was. So it's just my desire for rules and order. But that is what we have for fake or authentic this week. We're going to start trying to tuck these fake or authentics and maybe some throwback throwdowns back into the Jersey Nerds podcast. So be heads up on that. Also, I'm looking into getting a kind of a voicemail line for the Jersey Nerds podcast where you guys, the listeners, can leave a message or a question, and then we can play it on the podcast and respond to it accordingly. On hockeyjerseyconcepts.com right now, we have the Carolina Hurricanes top 3 vote. And that poll ends May 10th at noon Eastern time. So be sure to log into a Google account and vote appropriately. That's what we have for you this week. And to stay up to date with the Jersey Nerds podcast, be sure to subscribe and you'll get notifications whenever new shows are posted. Thanks to Shawn and Steve for joining me this week. And thank you to all the Jersey Nerds for listening. Goodbye, everybody.